Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be here.
All right, so now we're up to episode 334. So we're slowly climbing
There you go.
and everything. All right, well, I just actually wanted to start off with a couple of these questions here, and not from the list. I mean, one is Marty and playing college football there. So you posted this picture the other day, and I thought they actually have JV teams still. I mean,
Yeah, and there appears to be quite a few of them, and so yeah, so he has it's a D3 program, so like anybody who wants to try out could try out. So they do this so that all the guys can play, right? They're trying to keep people interested, and so they basically just create a few games. I think they have 5 of these games that they're going to play. And so Marty has friends who are on the George Mason University club football team, and they were getting ready to play the Ohio State JV. And I sort of feared for their their health. I mean, these are recruited 3-4 star athletes, and these are guys who went to Mason because they didn't have a lot of great football offers. So it's interesting to see, but yeah. So it's 12-minute quarters, like high school. It's not 15 like normal college, but both teams had a lot of guys out there. The other team had more people than us. They had probably 50, 60 people doing playing in JV games.
wow, that's remarkable. It just never occurred to me. I just thought over time those JV programs had gone extinct. But I mean, you just said Ohio State has a JV team.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fear that.
I mean Ohio. I mean, I was like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. These guys have JV teams. Is like that puts the fear of something into you.
Yeah. I mean, think about guys who are like on the 4th string at Ohio State, and now
Yeah.
you have the portal, and you have NIL. You have all kind of ways they can get right out of your team if they want to. So I think the colleges are like, what do we do? Because you can't just go find a whole new team every year, right? So what
Right.
do we do to kind of keep some of these guys around, even if they're not right now getting to play a lot? So I think I think you'll probably see more. I think it's sort of a logical response to the new climate, the portal, and so forth.
Yeah, yeah, no, this is. I mean, football is. I mean, yeah, the portal has made it really interesting. I mean, obviously, I mean, I follow Maryland a little bit. That's my alma mater, but I also follow BYU because that's where my kids went, and we're out there
Your
a lot,
money.
and we're out there and do a lot of stuff, and you know, so a few years ago, we actually had a young man in our mission. He was serving his mission here, and he had been recruited by Yale to play quarterback before he left on his mission. Before he went home, he changed and decided to go with BYU. In the intervening time, his younger brother, who'd been like a 4 or 5 star, athlete in Utah, committed to play for BYU before he left on his mission. And so, I'm thinking, so I see pictures of this guy periodically, and he's still wearing a BYU uniform, but it's like he's playing quarterback at BYU. It's like, where the heck is he on the depth chart? So
Yeah.
one of the former missionaries had gone to this last blowout game, and that they had, I guess, the season opener, and put a picture on like Instagram, and he kind of like said, that's my so and so, and it's like, wait a minute, that's the guy.
Oh wow! So he got
it's
in.
been, it's been it's been like 3 years, and he got in the game, and so I thought
Yeah.
this
See,
woman
that's what I
just
was
going.
telling Marty. It's like he didn't, Marty didn't make the starting lineup right off. That I'm like, like LSU's quarterback, he sat for 2 years, and then he's all ready to start, and they bring in Joe Burrow. Right? Okay, so you sit for 2 more years behind Joe Burrow. He's all ready to start, and they bring in Jaden Daniels. So then you sit for 2 more years behind Jaden Daniels. And now, I mean, this guy's been at LSU probably like 7 years. But, with COVID and all this stuff, the eligibility changed a lot. And so he's finally the man, for his second year. He was last year too. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, this was it Nussmeier?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
His father is a coach, is an NFL quarterbacks coach.
Right. Yeah, I think I just saw something. I didn't read the whole article yet, but the journal was writing about it's like this kid is probably the best quarterback in college football, probably a top pick.
We'll see.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's gotta talk to the LSU guy here.
It didn't look like it last week, but things could change.
Yeah, I mean, football is like that, though. You can have up and down, or you can perform very consistently all the way through.
Okay, so what Brian Kelly says about him is, and we bring all these people here to talk about LSU football, but it's really interesting what he says. He says one pass, he looks like the most accurate passer I've ever seen. The next pass, he hits the band practicing on the next field. So he's like, he's not consistent. So I think that's what we're going to be dealing with this year.
You just never really know which way it's going to go.
Try to win when he doesn't have the good stuff. Speaking of the good stuff, though, while we're on the sports too, I was also in Baltimore Saturday night to see the Orioles play. And I don't know, do you know what happened in this game?
Are you on the no-hit game with Yamamoto?
Yeah, I was at and so he gets 8 2/3 into the game with a no-hitter, and they're ahead 3-0, and they end up losing in the 9th inning. That Jackson Holliday is a very dangerous player. He's a very good major league player for the Orioles. He hit a home run to end the no-hitter. But you and Lori have been going to baseball games literally since we met, right? And I've seen a bunch of no-hitters, major leagues. I've seen 2 in the major leagues, 1 in 15 in the minor leagues. She's never seen one. So she was an out away again. This is the 3rd time she's made it to the last out. And when they lose it in all 3 cases, it was disaster. We were in Frederick one night, Dylan Bundy, who pitched for the Orioles for a while. Then I think he went to Toronto or somewhere, but he was a major league pitcher for a while. Frederick, he gets to the last out with a perfect game, and they're ahead 5-0, and they lose. Not only does he lose the perfect game, they lose the game. They lose 6-5. So it's we'll try again.
Yeah, I didn't look at the box score for that game. So after Yamamoto gave up the home run to Holliday, right?
Mm-hmm. And then they yanked him. Yeah.
And then they brought in the reliever. Right.
Blake Trinan, who's well known,
who used to pitch here, who used to pitch for Nationals, right?
Yeah.
He became he actually blossomed after he left the Nationals, even more so. But relievers, that's a tough game. I mean, it's you never know. Sometimes relievers can be remarkably consistent, and other times it's you never know. And
that's right.
Look at Aroldis Chapman. I mean, 38 years old, and he is just lights out this year.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about him is we'll eventually get to the part of this show.
Yeah.
But there was an article a couple of weeks ago that's someone was talking to him about throwing the fastball on the inside corner. You really want to try to throw this one on the inside corner. And he had never, you say he's 38 years old, one of the most successful relief pitchers in Major League history. He had never thought about throwing it to one side of the plate or the other. Think about that. He's just slinging it 102 miles an hour, and wherever it goes, it goes. He never thought about pinpointing it to one side of the plate or the other. How do you do that? How did no pitching coach ever say, hey, man, spot that pitch on this side or that side?
Yeah, I mean that is just kind of incredible. I mean, he's had a pretty remarkable career overall.
Yeah.
He had some years he hasn't been so great. Other years he's been fantastic. But you kind of look back on this and that comment, about that, think what would he have been like had he actually
known how to pitch?
If he actually placed his pitches, and located them, that who knows what could have happened there. But well, I mean, look, the way baseball is, though. I mean, he's 38. He's at the tail end of his career, but he's not at the end of his career necessarily, because baseball now is stretching these careers out.
Yeah.
We see, Verlander and these people, they're going to go for as long as they can.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like, and anymore in baseball and in all these sports, but especially baseball, the best ability is availability, right? It's like, it's very hard to keep these guys healthy.
Right.
It's a huge, like, my team, the Astros, has really been just crushed by injuries this year.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like if you can avoid the injury bug, you will have a good season. But a couple of key players go down for one reason or other. I mean, even if it's just for a month or two. But how many pitchers go out for the entire year? They're going to need Tommy John surgery or something like that. They've got other issues, and it changes the whole dynamic of the team and their trajectory. And so, what we have in baseball today is a lot of horse races. I mean, it's like these divisions where nobody's really playing all that well. Because
Right.
still, here we are. You're right. Here we are. We're September 10th. The season will end in about 3 weeks, or give or take. And there's no clear-cut winner, in the AL West, because this could change on a dime. These teams are just plodding along.
Yeah. The Astros are 21-32 since the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Think about that. And they're in first place. They're 11 games under 500, and they're in first place.
Yeah, you wonder how this happens, but that tells you what the other teams are doing, because they can't.
Yeah.
They've gained some ground, but I mean, it's just they're all there. I mean, what is it? They're within a game and a half or 2 games apart.
They're down to 1 game over Seattle.
Yeah. So I guess it's Brian on one side, Lori on the other side.
That's right. Getting a little tense around here. But the AL East is the same, right? They're in a losing contest too. So
no one's. I mean, the Blue Jays may hang on, but if it just takes the Red Sox or the Yankees to catch a little fire here, and then they claim the crown. But then the end will be the real determining factor is how you set it up for your postseason. And
the other thing is, like, who do you like in the postseason? Like, the Dodgers are struggling, Padres are struggling, we're struggling, Mariners are struggling, Yankees are struggling, Blue Jays are struggling. Who's your team?
Tigers cooled off.
Tigers have cooled off.
Yeah. So this is going to be a very wide open postseason if you look at it today.
Yeah,
that's for sure. All right. So that's the Baseball Tonight segment of our show. Anyway, but that's always fun. I mean, I enjoy talking about sports, but we do need to talk about the news. And there have definitely been a few things going on here. So we have Russia. They've been increasing their attacks on Ukraine really since Putin and Trump met, and they actually struck a government building in Ukraine for the first time. They had not been able to do, or they had not done it up until this time, but this just happened. And I know that President Trump is very unhappy with the situation, but realistically, what can he do? How much more can he do, to try to bring a resolution to this conflict?
Well, he can do a lot of stuff to hurt Putin. I mean, they really have not undertaken a whole lot of steps to actually hurt Putin. They kept thinking that they could do it. They could win his cooperation with the threat of those. But apparently it's going to have to be more than the threat. They're going to have to actually do some stuff. So, I would my guess is that Trump is cooking up some game-changing reprisal for that, especially now that I guess they've sent some drones into Poland. Poland's Article 5. At that point, we all got to get off the bench. They're a NATO country, so there's no debate about it if you're attacking Poland. So, Putin seems to want to provoke wider trouble, but he's not able to do this conventionally. So if you push him too far, you're going to see whatever he has in the back room, the nukes or whatever, because he can't. He doesn't have much conventional firepower left.
He seems to be convinced that he can hang on. That that if he ramps up the pressure on Ukraine like this, that he will get them to basically come crawling and agree to his terms, so that they basically take over a large portion of Ukraine at this point in time. This incursion into Poland's airspace, though, you know, brings up another question. Though, I mean, you know, NATO forces, I guess, shot them down, but now this starts to probably, you know, set off alarm bells among NATO countries out there, saying, okay, you know, we've been helping out, you know, Ukraine, you know, but this has been a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and we've been giving them material and some other things, and we haven't put troops on the
accepting
ground.
the refugees too.
Right, helping refugees. But now, you know, you sent drones into Polish airspace. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this you know, this is not like, no, I don't think anybody believes that they accidentally, you know, strayed in that space. You know, and so, you know, this could change some of the thinking among NATO countries. I think they're going to be taking a lot closer look at how this is going, because now they're saying, like, wait a minute, Russia is now starting to invade our airspace. What is, you know, with these, what is next? I mean, are they going to start to ramp that up too? Do they think they can put pressure on NATO countries to end this conflict? I don't think that's the
Well, I
way it's
mean,
going to
you
go.
know, they're now saying, you know, I mean, the big line that he has used is, you know, this is just about settling up, you know, what ought to be part of the Rus and all this kind of stuff. This, you know, making historical things, righting historical wrongs, and getting, you know, the parts of Ukraine that are ethnic Russian back into Ukraine and whatnot. Okay, but it's a different deal with Poland, right? He's now said, you know, no, I'm trying to reassemble the Warsaw Pact, right? You know, I mean, that's what other inference can you take? So, you know, I think now what you will see is an attack on their drone capability, right? They're buying the drones abroad. They're not making them. And so you'll either, like, the shipments will be interrupted, or the places where they're retrofitted and launched will be interrupted, or the command that takes care of that will be interrupted. So, you know, we have a breadth of countermeasures at our disposal, and I think that you're getting to the point where, you know, the thing about it is like, you do not want to provoke a nuclear war over, you know, 200 miles of mud in eastern Ukraine, right? But you're to the point where, you know, if you're going to involve Poland, you're going to involve NATO countries, then, you know, yes, you are going to get a response, and it's likely to be one that deals a substantial blood.
Yeah, I mean, and this lends more credence to, I mean, I think what, you know, we've been saying off and on for the last 3.5 or so years is just that it seems that, you know, Putin's, you know, ultimate goal. I mean, you talk about Warsaw Pact. I mean, in essence, you know, I've always framed it in the fact that in the sense of, he wants to recreate the old Soviet Union,
Right.
you know,
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Right. So in essence, the same thing. I mean, but that's what he wants. He wants to basically just, you know,
Right.
he wants to go
And
back.
he had an effective argument saying, no, this is just about settling up things in Ukraine. That's all I'm trying to do. But if you're going to mess with Poland, then that's not all you're trying to do. Right. Yeah. Now it's either, you know, a little bit, it's either, you know, none or all. Right. So once he goes into Poland, we're not just settling old scores with Ukraine. We are attacking, you know, we're trying to reassemble the Warsaw Pact. We're attacking a NATO country.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically trying to turn the clock back 35, 36 years or whatever, and say that this was the ideal situation, and this is what I want to do. But I think, you know, it's been over 3 decades. You can see some of these countries, they're doing fine, you know, and I think they will put up a fight. They're not going to just roll over and say, yeah, and, you know, and I think, you know, if he tries to push this too hard, he's going to find himself up against NATO troops, because they're going to finally have to say, all right, look, we know Ukraine's not a member of NATO, but, you know, you have now breached other countries. And so now it's our war as well. It's not just Ukraine. You're now bringing us into this fight. So therefore, they're going to be, you know, and you bring in more troops against, you know, what Russia's got, then Putin's in trouble, because, you know, he's running out of people, right? And he's running. He just doesn't have the wherewithal to withstand a big attack going on him. So, you know, he better watch out what he's doing here.
Right, because he could lose a lot in a hurry. Like you know, you figure, you know, if you could greatly inflict casualties on the soldiers who are in Ukraine, not the people still back in Russia, but the ones that are the Russian soldiers who are in Ukraine. If they started dying in large numbers, it's not clear what Putin's options would be.
Right. All right. So there's another story that's been made a lot of news too, which is Israel has made a strike into Doha, Qatar.
Well, we don't know it's Israel
to eliminate Hamas.
Right, and we don't know that Qatar and the U.S. appear to have completely cooperated with this. Right, you saw Qatar's statement was, we are going to do a thorough investigation of this, and we're going to write a report about our investigation. Then we will have some remarks to make about our report. It's like, okay, please, no more reports. So they all nodded and winked on that. They got them all in. And why do these people keep having these meetings, right? They keep having these deals where all the people show up in one room, and then they go bomb the room, and you've completely decapitated the leadership of Hamas. It's like, you think they would resist the urge to gather in one room. So, I don't know. I don't know. But, he decapitated. He got the top 6 guys in one fell swoop.
And well, one of my questions about this too is that, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of this, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know. I mean, if I'd had the intelligence and I knew that they were in Qatar and everything like this, I'd be definitely working with Qatar to say, we need to go and get them now, not wait 2 years. And try. You've got to cut the head off as quickly as you can. And yeah, you're right too about the point about just like what, I would have thought these people were somewhat paranoid in the sense that especially the way Israel has reacted and been very forceful in trying to to take out Hamas. That's like, if it's pretty well known that this is kind of like a little HQ, and you've got a bunch of you have these meetings, is like, aren't you just basically putting up a flag saying, come and get me, just saying, go ahead, try. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just going to say, maybe they thought they had lifetime protection by Qatar, to do that, and that
they should not think that, right? But they've gotten real comfortable there. They have a lot of money, the people who run Hamas, and they're billionaires, and they buy these lavish houses there and on the island, and that's how they that's what they do. And so they all got in one place, and Israel supposedly has been working on this for months, getting this rounded up into one place where you could do this. So it wasn't a fresh idea; it was carefully planned.
Yeah. So anyway, it's another blow to Hamas, which is definitely needed at this point in time. I was on another situation here too. As I saw, I think it was in the New York Times or something. They had done a poll about support of Israel and Palestinians in New York. Based on the candidates in the race, right? I mean, really, I guess for Mandami, Cuomo, and Adams, and the New Yorkers, whatever group of people they polled. I mean, the Mandami supporters, 74% supported, the Palestinians. Cuomo had 38% for Israel and like 24 for Palestine. I can't remember what the other one was exactly, but I just thought that the whole thing was remarkable. I mean, okay, New York City voters. Okay, so here it is. Mandami, yeah. So it's 28% for support Palestine among Cuomo supporters, 38 support Israel. New York City voters overall, 26% for Israel, 44% for Palestinians. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, here's the thing to think about that. A third of all the Jews in the United States live in New York. So I mean, you're getting those polling numbers out of a third of the Jews in the country.
Right. I mean, this is what it is. It's like, I mean, we know it's a heavily Jewish population. It's like, it's one thing, I mean, Mandami is just, kind of a crazy socialist, and
Yeah.
I expected him to have a high, you hear what he talks about, that high support among Palestinians.
Yeah, nut bags on socialism or equals nut bags on
Yeah,
Palestinians.
but I really did think overall, or at least with Cuomo, that he'd have a high the people who supported Cuomo or claimed to support Cuomo there would be a higher preponderance to support Israel over over the Palestinians at this point in time. And I don't know. I mean, I guess that as we we're less than 2 months away, I guess, from the election in New York, right? So Mandami, I don't know if these guys are going to stop. Even if Eric Adams drops out, I don't know. Is there enough there for Cuomo to beat Mandami right now? I mean,
no.
I think, yeah.
I think I'm moving into the George Will camp on this. That I'm fine with Mandami winning. So because every once in a while you need to put one of these nutbags in charge and show people that nutbaggery doesn't work. Let it crash and burn, and then you say okay.
Right. I mean, and our system is that you get what you vote for, right? Elections have consequences.
Let him fire all the cops and let the criminals take the streets. I don't go to New York. I don't.
Let him go ahead and set up a New York City grocery store operation.
Yeah,
see how
do all that stuff, and when it doesn't work, then hopefully the people there will come to their senses. But I mean, they don't. It takes a lot to get them to come to their senses up there. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when people feel that times are tough, or they don't, Adams, he's been under a cloud with some allegations about this, that, and the other. So his chances of winning re-election, were pretty slim anyway. Opening the door to Cuomo, but Cuomo is Cuomo. I mean, he's a damaged bill of goods.
Right. He's not. Yeah. He's not really been effective. He hasn't really made a dent in this. I mean, unless there's some powerful intervening event, Mandami's going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's it doesn't look good for this. But if Mandami wins, you just watch and see what will happen to that city, which would be tragic in a lot of ways. I mean, I think you and I are both proud Americans. We want our country, we want our cities to thrive.
Yeah.
But you do have to let the election system work its way through. And if voters are going to be blind enough to go and vote for this guy, thinking that what he's promised is taking them to the promised land, they're in for a rude awakening about what's really going to happen.
That's right.
When everything comes down to it. So I just don't really know. We also have a little bit of turmoil elsewhere overseas. So that the Liberal Democratic Party in Japan lost more seats in the last election.
Right.
That's put them, I guess, in the minority in the parliament. So the prime minister, who's been in office for less than a year, is now going to resign fairly soon. Japan is relatively stable, but they do have these things do occur from time to time where you get these changes in prime ministers. And I was thinking that the thing with a lot of these guys, and particularly in Japan, is that it always seems to be a small set of guys, people who are kind of going to be in that group that'll be eligible. So you resign, somebody else comes in. Hopefully they survive until the next election cycle. But if they lose, maybe one of the people out of that other group, or maybe you make a political comeback and come back again, and there seems to be just a lot of this circular motion in Japan with that. And then we have France, where Macron is under a lot of fire, a lot of heat. And
his government collapsed.
Yeah, right. His premier lost the confidence vote. And so he's named a new guy. What is the guy? Sébastien Lecornu, who is the outgoing defense minister, I think it is. So, hopefully, for Macron, I guess he's hoping that keeps it together for a while. But, France, I mean, Macron is he's in big trouble. I mean, he's in
big trouble. In Germany, the like top 5 right, members of the ascending right wing party have died in the last month. Probably nothing wrong there, nothing to suspect, right? But the world is moving to the right at a rather rapid pace, right? Right now, the liberal government in Australia is in trouble. The right wing is gaining big there. Austria, right wing, conservatives. Le Pen is her party is the leading party in France now. So, a lot of they're looking at, we're told on our media, oh, world hates Trump. Well, the whole world's trying to get more like Trump, right? They're kind of looking for their Trumps. I saw, the other day a piece complaining that Meloni in Italy, who is, one of Trump's allies, is not being Trump enough and cleaning up immigration and so forth in Italy. So, the pressure is to do the Trump thing. And the influences, and people talk about like, we'll go back after this all ends. Right. This is not going to end, and there's not going to be any going back. There's not going to be, people are rejecting this for a reason.
Yeah. Well, look at the UK. I mean, Keir Starmer. I mean, I think they thought that the Liberal Party was going to have a long run, but they've run into all kinds of problems.
Right. But he's moving as close to Trump as he can possibly move and stay in office.
Right, and they just had their deputy prime minister had to resign for a tax issue, and apparently, and she's a key to keeping the left coalition together. So that throws into question about Starmer's ability to keep the left in place without this woman there. So we've talked about this also a number of times too. It's just like we look at the world, we look at our system, we said, maybe our system isn't perfect, but we actually have some order to
it's better than the others. Not good, but better than the others.
Yeah, you go almost anywhere else in the world. Yeah, go ahead.
The genius in Canada he's not faring too well either, right? Politics is turning against him too. He's already had to cave to Trump on trade and likely will on some other stuff too. Pretty soon.
So there's some other clouds on the horizon, some other things brewing overseas that we have yet to see what the final result will be. But you can just see some of the turmoil that's going on and where the left is having problems. I'm not a big endorser of, say, the far right parties in some of these other countries, because some of them are like far, they're like way past. But some of these guys actually have some decent proposals and ideas, particularly when it comes to immigration and things like that. I think a lot of these countries realizes that we've got to get a hold of our immigration issues and control our borders, and that because when they don't, it's created all kinds of problems.
Right. That's right.
It's given them so many headaches. All right. So now I want to talk about tariffs. So tariffs are back. They stay in the news. I mean, I was looking. They said, I guess we've collected $185 billion in tariffs in the last several months. We're going to collect more in tariffs. In 6 or 7 months, whatever, than we did all of last year. And but tariffs are having a little bit of a bumpy path in the courts, and so but the Supreme Court has agreed to hear this latest case, and it doesn't involve, I guess, what some like the aluminum and some other things like that, but there's some other tariffs that it does encompass, and so the Supreme Court is going to look at this and see whether or not how Trump imposed these tariffs is legal. It has apparently slowed down to a certain extent some of the negotiation with some of these other countries, because they're kind of like, oh, well, let's see what happens here. And others are looking to say, will we get some money back, if this fails in the Supreme Court? I'm not a Supreme Court savant or anything like this. In general, at least in some of these other rulings they've tended to lean and given Trump some authority. I don't know if that's the case, if they'll do that here or not.
Well, so the big issue here is a lot of the tariffs that he has put forth are under the something called IEPA, which is a law that regards how the president can deal with other countries, and tariffs can be enacted unilaterally by the president to address threats, to address things that we have to move around, and they don't have to get congressional approval of it, right? So Trump is he's put forth 3 or 4 things as the threats that have to be addressed. The main one that he has put forth is that we're $38 trillion in debt, right? And this is a way and that poses an emergency danger to the U.S. And that's what he's addressing with this. Now, if you accept that argument, then he has tariff. He can work tariffs, for the rest of his term, and in whatever way he likes. The emergency of being 38 trillion in debt, it might not get much worse, but it's not going to get appreciably better between now and 2028, right? I mean, we might, if we get to 2028 and we're still 38 trillion in debt, that'll be a huge victory, right? So this threat is not going to go away. Now, we have been in debt since for a long time now, since World War II. Basically, we have we balanced the budget a couple of times. The last time was during the Clinton administration, but the debt we have not addressed in any means since then. So it's something that's been going on since the 40s, an emergency. That's also a question that could get raised. So, there are scholars on both sides of this who are making both predictions that, yes, he will succeed. No, he won't. Like John Yoo is a, conservative scholar. And he's saying, if you can convince them it's, this is an emergency we're studying for 40 or whatever years, then it's an emergency, that we've been facing for that long, then you're in. But if you can't, trouble. Now, the other thing is like, this is all done, right? These tariffs are in place. They're generating income. They're generating whatever effect they have on the economy, which appears to be modest. The PPI back down, you saw the jobs numbers revised downward. I think you're starting to get real jobs numbers there. Which are not what we were getting before. And he has this much in place, and defanging the president of negotiating ability, using tariffs to get a lot of policy outcomes that he's won by pressure applying tariffs. The court has to strike down a lot of progress to do that, and it's not clear that they're willing to do that. So it's it could go either way, but I think marginally I'm sort of like 57% chance that Trump wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it will hinge on the whole emergency aspect of it, because wasn't the debt something like 16 trillion or whatever under Obama or whatever? I mean, and it's continued to grow. I mean, you talk about we've basically been in debt since World War II. But it was always kind of manageable. But you get to these levels, and then interest rates, spike back up, and now you're spending a ton of money just on interest to service the debt.
That is why Trump's beating on the Fed so hard, is to try to get what the interest we're paying on this down. Right.
But I mean, those are all very tricky economic levers, I think, to try to pull. You can browbeat the Fed as much as you want, but they're going to be looking at lots of numbers and trying to figure this out. Now, as you had alluded to, we just got the annual jobs revision, which goes from like March, April of last year to this year, showed a huge downward revision, one of the largest ones we've had.
The largest one we've ever had.
Yeah, not necessarily unusual to see these revisions, because it takes a lot of time to gather this information. The participation rate on the monthly surveys that the BLS does is down in the 40% range. It used to be in the 60% range. So gathering the data has been a problem, and we've got to find a better way to gather the data to get a better idea of where we really are. Because when they revised the last unemployment numbers, kind of like this, they went back and it's like, oh, we lost jobs, and some things. So we're seeing some things here that are they're not going in the right direction. And you can see a softening in the market because you just have people who are struggling to get jobs. I mean, we came out of the pandemic and there was a lot of hiring going on. There was a big boom time. If you're in the right job category, you could almost name your price in your company and do that. Things are very, very different right now. People are kind of pulling back a little bit. But inflation, the PPI, as you said, it went down 1/10 of 1%, which was unexpected. We're going to get a CPI figure tomorrow, and we'll see where that fits in. But it looks like we're overall 2.6, 2.9, depending on core. So it's still reasonable, still higher than what it was, under Trump. But this may be
but much lower than it was under Biden.
Yeah, right. And
we 1.5, 2 points that
Yeah, I mean, this may wind up being somewhere in here, may be kind of the new normal, which we just get used to living with, because it's hard to keep some costs down. I mean, I can use you get things that are very volatile, which get excluded from this, but it does affect people. Okay, okay, we're coming up on Halloween, in a month and a half or whatever it is, and so chocolate, that's a big business at Halloween, right? We're handing out chocolate to kiddies and whatnot. Well, you go to Costco and they've got this really nice bag of candy, fun size candy or whatever. I don't know. I think it's like 200 pieces or whatever. Last fall, that stuff was selling for about $20, which was already higher than it had before because cocoa prices are just out of control. And, they're starting to put these out for people who want to shop, for Halloween or whatever. The new price is $23.69. So it's like, whoa, it makes even my wife and I we're like, okay, maybe we figure out something different. You have the candy bar that you may remember, used to be able to, like when I was a kid, okay, in the late 60s or 70s, I could walk into a People's Drug, which is now CVS. I could buy the full size candy bar, the regular candy bar, for like a nickel or whatever, right? And then then it went up over time. And then you had later on, probably in the 80s, you could get like those king size bars, and they'd be like $1 when they go on sale. All right. You got to pay Costco or Sam's Club, the bulk pack of those kind of candy bar of now the regular candy bars that they sell, single serve. So their bulk pack sale is $1 a piece, right? I'm like, so what the heck are they charging in the stores? And so I think I did check CVS today. I think it was $1. Was it $1.89 or something like that? I remember just a few years ago, even that was like 89 cents, and I still thought that was high. So there are some aspects of our lives where things are kind of out of control and out of kilter. Other things have kind of smoothed over. Egg prices have kind of leveled off. Milk
Food prices overall,
yeah, bread. I mean, some of those things. I mean, for heaven, I was in Costco last week, and I'm like, they're actually having a sale on bread. Costco, they like almost never do this. So you can see certain things like that. It's like, okay, well, that's good. The consumer can deal with that. But we're still, you go to the store, and I know my wife and I are definitely in the mentality of like, if we do we want it, do we need it? If so, we probably should buy it today because we're not really sure what the price will be down the line. Maybe, except for maybe if we think it might go on sale. But otherwise, we're kind of, my mentality now is a little bit like the 1980s when I was a teenager, well, a young adult teenager, where we were like, well, if you don't buy today, the price tomorrow could be significantly higher. It was because inflation was nuts back then, right? I mean, and we got a little bit with Biden.
Point I was going to make about what you're saying is, to me, it's 1981. Right, Reagan came in. You had terrible overspending. Trying to cover up economic shortcomings with big spending bills, which is just like Reagan, just like Biden did. They blamed Trump for the debt, and Biden signed $4.5 trillion in legislation in 1 year of new spending. So these are not appropriations bills where it's stuff we always buy. I'm talking about new spending put on the board, $4.5 trillion, but the debt's Trump's fault. Gotcha. So, what happened after that year, right? Reagan took a year, an austerity year, right? The Volcker rule and all that stuff. And by 1982, we were into the longest and most sustained peacetime economic recovery in history. So, I think that's where we're headed. I think that, we're, the tariffs, like how to get around tariffs or how to minimize their impact on your price, on the price you can bring a product to market for. This is the worst part of that. People are figuring that out now. There's some trial and error and so forth. I started saying catch and release. That's not quite the same. So we're rounding into form to have you can see it falling into place. I think that if the Supreme Court goes against Trump on the tariffs, could throw a lot of stuff into kilter, and they may have to. They may, they may see that the law does not allow for what he's doing. But they've been pretty good about finding out exactly what the law allows and going right up to the limit of the law, right? In their use, like deployment of executive power and so forth, all across government. They would, one of Trump's superpowers is, they find things in the law that allow them to do stuff that no one ever thought about for it. If you read the IEPA statute, right, it conveys broad executive authority over this to determine what is and this may be why Trump wins, that says the president determines what's an emergency and the president determines this and that and the other. So, that he may be able to argue this is what we determined. And, it's kind of hard to make the case that $38 trillion in debt is not something we need to be worried about. This is not some kind of an emergency. So, my thinking is that we are on the cusp of huge economic growth in the next year. And, if you ask Besant and Lutnick and those guys, that seems to be where they are too.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this right now is that I think that it appears that the market is kind of pricing all of this stuff in because they're hitting new highs.
Right.
I think they've gotten over their Liberation Day, fears that sent the market down, and we've gone completely in the other direction. And the market,
yeah, it's weird. Like Trump has changed the way the entire economic part of social discourse is carried out. Right, the economic experts, it's completely decided differently than it was 6 months ago.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's true too. But you look at the market always is looking at future earnings. What they want. They're not pricing the market really for today. They're pricing the market for 6 months to a year from now. And right now they seem to be fairly optimistic. Lots of different things go in there. Combination of AI and lots of different things that kind of fuel all of this. But so it'll be interesting. I mean, if the Supreme Court rules against Trump and forces him to unwind the tariffs, the market might react positively, they may react negatively, they may just give it a shoulder shrug, because that I can't predict. Nobody can predict which way the market goes. It just has this mind of its own, in terms of which way that goes, and it's just one part of the barometer of where we are. But the effect it has is the wealth effect. I mean, if it goes up and people feel that they've got more money in their pocket, even if it's just money on paper gains of their investments, they will help juice the economy. They will go out and buy things and do things as a result of that, so their net worth expands and they're like, oh, I can afford to do this, I can afford to do that. So they do have a place to play. All right, real quick before we just kind of wrap things up. The South Korean, the whole raid on this Hyundai factory in Georgia, and all these Korean workers that were arrested, South Korean workers arrested, and they're going to send 300 or so home. At first, I was like, well, I didn't understand what the heck was going on down there, but I guess they were brought in for a specific purpose, but they weren't all brought in. They didn't follow all the rules to get them in here. And apparently part of the problem though is that South Korea's just been limited on how many people they can bring in. They want to bring in more. Apparently other companies have been able to get more workers in to do things that where American workers don't have the specialized skills to do that. But the other side of this is that
teach them the specialized skills. The whole point of having it here is to give Americans jobs, right? That's why we have tariffs.
Right. But I mean, if you don't have Americans that learn how to do it, or you're trying to teach Americans. But what's interesting about this to me is just that they had brought in so many Koreans that there's a city called Pooler, Georgia, that they basically set up a Korean community. It exploded.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you've got a bunch of Korean restaurants. You got this Korean church thing going and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's not a very temporary situation. I don't have if you can, I don't have a problem. The government between the U.S. government and South Korean government, they should have that. They should understand, like, okay, we need to bring some of these people over so we can teach some of the Americans how to run these machines or how to set up the machines. And then after that, you go home. You don't stay. You don't basically become permanent residents of the United States.
Yeah, and I remember it was like on one of my basketball trips. We were in South Carolina somewhere, and we go to mass, and the priest gets up and says, there's gonna be 1,200 Korean families moving into our parish, right? Not just Korean, but Korean Catholics, right? And you will involve them in the church, and you will welcome them, and you will make them part of our parish. Do you understand? Right in their face, which is okay. That's what the church should do, right? But so there's the intent when the Koreans especially build stuff here that they're also going to send a lot of the workers, and that's not what we're about, right? Your factory drains some stuff from us, right? We want the jobs, right? We're making a deal with you, and it's like you don't get all the sides of the deal,
right? They should look. I mean, I have no problem. Look, you should not bring in foreign workers like that to take American jobs.
Right.
It's
you want to bring in trainers temporarily. Right. That's okay, but that's not what they're talking about doing, right? They're talking about people.
Well, not with 300 something people.
Right. You don't need that many trainers for that long.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I don't. It'll be interesting to see how Korea and the U.S. resolve these things going forward. I mean, South Korea does want to continue to invest. Trump has been able to get them to commit to doing investment.
But a big.
But I think the South Korean government also thought that came with allowing some of their people to come over and do things. But they're going to have to ratchet down some of those expectations and say, you can bring in your specialized people to train our people, but you're not going to bring in this army of people that are going to be working in the factory forever, in essence,
and
never going back to Korea because they love to be able to work, and live in America. I mean,
there are disadvantages. I have people argue with me about all this all the time. There are disadvantages to managed trade, right? If you're going to say we're going to, line you up with this and give you these benefits and so forth, but the advantage of it is, we are getting jobs for our people. Right. We're not getting jobs for people who don't live here now.
Yeah. All right. So as we wind around the show here, so this terrible incident about this Ukrainian woman on a light rail train in Charlotte just came to light, killed by this deranged guy on the train. The federal government is going to also bring charges because I think they're worried about whether or not North Carolina will be able to make their charges stick or really follow through enough, with this. Right. This guy's got a rap sheet. He's got a problem.
Yeah,
he's definitely
been in jail 14 times.
he's definitely got some kind of mental problem because right now it doesn't look like there is anything. It was completely unprovoked attack. Right? It was 10 o'clock.
His brother apparently randomly shot some 65-year-old guy a couple of years ago, and his father is a career criminal. I mean, and one of the points is getting made out of this, and I think it's a good way that like the left and the right could get together and work on this is there's not really a lot of criminals, right? There's a lot of crime. So what's happening is it's the same few people, right? And they're not going to behave. The violence is okay with them, right? If you let them out, they're going to reoffend. So the thing is to find those people, and either there's some magic mental health fix that makes them sociable again, or they go to prison so they don't bother us, right? I mean, that's all that there can be on this. So, I'm happy to work with people on mental health as opposed to incarceration, or mental health where you're behind bars, right? But they're dealing with that. I don't have a problem with looking at that on all these people. Obviously, a lot of them are not right mentally, right? Or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But, the people who put them up to it, and like, who's putting this guy up to it, right? Who got in his head? Who made him hate like that? Because I mean, it's one thing if you don't like people of other races, right? If you can walk down the street without doing anything to them, we don't have any interest in caring whether you like them or not, right? But it's when you start harming them, then we have an interest. Then we got to step up. So, and then I think it's also a comment on, the Democrats refuse to put these people in jail. They keep thinking they're going to get better, or they don't really care, right? And then it's like, you're taking a man from our community off the street. Well, that man's killing people. It's okay if he's off the street. So, I mean, it's a mess down there, and the left performed as it usually does on these things, right? It ignored the problem, then it pretended it didn't ignore the problem, then it went back to ignoring the problem.
Yeah. So my part about this too, beyond everything that you just said, though, is also this is a light rail system. Okay.
Yeah.
And I have ridden lots of light rail systems around the country, and there's a couple of there's several glaring problems with light rail. One is that it's basically an honor system to buy the fare, because they have very little enforcement. And so
Right.
what this does, and I have, like I said, and I've been on way too many, light rail trains where you've got basically a homeless person on the train. They just walk on the train and they just ride the train from one end to the other and back again. And they just sit there and they stink up the car or whatever, so maybe they panhandle a little bit. And as Charlotte said, I mean, they were going to step up their enforcement, because there's very rarely do you see any transit police of any kind on light rail cars. I've seen it a couple of times. I remember it in Minneapolis. I remember in St. Louis, but I don't remember seeing any in Atlanta or Portland, California, Baltimore. I saw a whole bunch of them years ago when I parked at a light rail station and then took the light rail into the city to go attend a conference. And I always remember this. I'm sitting on the train right near Camden Yards, ready, just waiting for it to leave. And I look out the window, and there must have been 30 light rail employees. I'm not quite sure exactly what their status was, but they're all joking and talking to each other. But there's nobody coming on the train to check your ticket. Never did during that little, it was a very short ride to get to the light rail station where my car was. But I'm like, yeah, light rail, Democrat governments love this thing. They think this is a panacea to helping solve, mass transit issues, and it's not. It's an open invitation for those, people to take advantage and just ride for free, and potentially commit crime, because the security is almost non-existent. So,
and that's part of why, that's exactly right. And we'd have had a whole bunch of other lectures. The light rail in, I forgot what I was going to say. It was a good one too.
See, this is what happens when we get older.
But yeah, it is a problem that they're not policed. And, I know what I was going to say. So all the money that Maryland has spent on mass transit, MARC trains, Metro in the DC area, the Metro thing they have, and the light rail system in Baltimore that they have that extends out to Ellicott City or wherever. It has reduced car trip commuting by less than 1%. So it's fun for those people who ride it, but if your object is to take car traffic off the street, it's a non-factor.
Well, I mean, my one of my pet peeves is the purple line. To me, Governor Hogan, made this a bigger boondoggle by fast tracking this thing and getting it going. And so the cost overruns have continued to go. They displaced lots of small businesses in Silver Spring to make room for the tracks. Lots of other disruptions. We have a pandemic that comes through, and exactly it's like, so who's going to ride this thing when it's ready? We've mass transit.
Yeah, they imagine that there's this big bunch of people who want to get from Bethesda to Silver Spring and can't do it without, that's really what it is, right? I mean, those are not destinations for each other. I mean, occasionally, BCC plays against Blair, so the BCC people got to go over to Blair, but that's not worthy of a mass transit.
Well, and I think there's some liberal virtue signaling with these things too, where it was like, hey, look at me, I'm doing my part. I'm not driving my car, I'm taking this light rail.
Right.
You're right.
That's exactly right.
So you're doing that. So I think you get a little bit of that as well, along the way. But yeah, I can never forgive Governor Hogan for pushing this forward, and just for the amount of money taxpayers have had to spend on this thing, which is still not anywhere near completion.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Last couple of subjects, a few subjects here, real quick. Lisa Cook, McCord has ruled they've paused the ability of Trump to fire. So we'll see that. These are gray areas to me. It's like, how much authority does Trump have to go?
The same thing as the IAEPA is like,
Right.
What is for cause, right? And so right now she is credibly accused of mortgage fraud, right? So I think what I put on the Twitter last night when this came out was, they just got her indicted, right? Because they're going to indict her now because they have plenty of evidence to indict her, and even if they don't convict her, being indicted for mortgage fraud got to be for cause to run the Fed.
Right.
If mortgage fraud does not get you knocked out of the Fed, then what I'm saying.
If she gets indicted, then I think she's fair game. I think that qualifies. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, she looks like she'll stay on the Fed board for now. We've got a Fed meeting next week. Stephen Moran should be confirmed hopefully by then, and then they'll be taking a vote on interest rates, which may get us a quarter point cut, maybe a little bit larger, depends upon what the rest of the economic numbers show here in the next few days. Walkinshaw, is that his name? Walkinshaw wins the Connolly seat. Yeah. So the only thing I want to comment about this is just that he made some statement about how this is kind of a repudiation of the whole Trump agenda or stuff like this. Like, you're in a Democrat seat. You're taking over for Jerry Connolly. It's like, don't give me this Trump BS. It's like this it was going to be almost impossible for a Republican to win this seat. So it's like this is not a big deal. Is anybody like, oh my gosh, this is a big surprise? No.
Well, he was far better known, far better financed. He worked for Connolly. He was on the county board of supervisors. The other guy's unknown, a military officer, defense intelligence guy that never had any political role at all. Walkinshaw worked for Connolly. He was Connolly's body man for a long time. So everybody who knows Connolly in the district knows him. So he had a huge built-in advantage. On top of that, no one has felt the wrath of Trump more than federal workers, right? Federal bureaucrats. So basically, where do you find your federal bureaucrats? Virginia 11 is where many of them are located, right? So if they hate Trump, it means Trump is doing what the rest of the nation elected him to do. I will say this. So the margin on this was 75 to 24. Now, that's obviously more, one thing, I think if we think back about, I remember Tom Davis. So the last time he ran was 2008. And he ran against an unknown lawyer named Andy Hurst. And Tom Davis had gotten more than 70% in every election he'd ever run. Mason District Supervisor, county, chairman of the county board of supervisors, all his elections to Congress. He got 55% against a guy that I'm the only one who remembers his name, right? He was a complete unknown before, and he's never run for anything since. No one knows whatever happened to him, right? And we're all like, I remember the leaders of the staff saying, why are we so worried about Andy Hurst? And Tom Davis knew to be worried because he was looking at the numbers. And he's like, this is the last time a Republican will be able to win this seat, no matter what they say or who they are, or how moderate they are, or how good they work and play with the federal employees, which Tom was very good at. They're just not going to win. The demographics are not there anymore. And sure enough, he was right. And so now it's gone from him, his last one was 55 Republican down, Republicans have gone from 55 down to 24. And they've gone from 45 up to 75. So, we're getting crushed here. And so Biden, for the last, I think, 8 or 10 elections, it's been about 70% Republican. So the fact that this one was 75, 70% Democrat. The fact that this one's 75 tells you that, this was a strong Democrat vote for Waukesha.
Okay.
He covered the spread, as they say.
Yeah. Finally, we started with sports and we'll end with sports, and we'll end with the Philadelphia Phillies and their Karen, the woman who just basically berated the father of a boy who, after Harrison Bader hit a home run into an empty section where the father grabbed the ball, and she then berated him for saying that was her ball. And so he decided to just give her the ball. The kid came out pretty good overall. He got all kinds of things from the Marlins. He got an autographed bat from Harrison Bader, and there's some outfit, I think, too, that's offered her $5,000. I don't even know if they've really identified her, because I think there've been stories about who it is, but they said, oh, we misidentified that person, if she would give her that ball. But there's some condition, I can't remember what it was, but I did see this. You gotta love the internet, right? You gotta love people and everything doing stuff like that. It's like,
and it's so perfect that she's wearing a Phillies. Like, the people who watch this show who don't live around here, you got to know that the Phillies fans are probably the worst fans in all of sports.
Yeah.
They're just awful humans, like all of them.
But I want to give credit to the dad who was quoted saying that to lay off of her, just that's it. He didn't want to go through, he didn't want to have to deal with this anymore. It's just like, she's probably suffered enough. At this point in time. But people, I don't understand people at sporting events when they act like that, right? There was a tennis incident where
unmitigated gall to go up to the guy and say, "That's my ball." It's like, you should be arrested, or something. Put it in a loony bin.
Yeah, it's just a kind of, you're going to be famous for all the wrong reasons. You go viral for all the wrong reasons.
What are the chances she voted for Trump? I'm gonna say,
you can break it down that way. I don't know.
I'm gonna say they're not large.
Yeah, probably so. Especially since they're a Phillies fan.
That's right.
All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
You said Cracker Barrel wanted to.
Shoot. Yeah, that's right. That's
Cracker Barrel. They, I told you. I guess last week we talked about how there was a guy who went on there and said on the internet, and he said, we've been contracted to remodel 250 Cracker Barrels. This is our first one. What do you think? And I messaged him back. I said, it's not your fault. He messaged me back and said, thank you for understanding that.
Yeah, so Cracker Barrel has 660 restaurants.
Yeah.
They apparently
canceled all these orders.
They apparently remodeled 4. But the backlash over the logo change, for one thing, right?
And the logo and the way the store, it wasn't really, it's and the way the stores were, right? People wanted that kitsch. They wanted that stuff over the table to look at, and the little game with the golf tees, and they don't want it modernized. They don't want it to look like you know, the McDonald's Mexican place, whatever it's called. What's it called?
Chipotle.
Chipotle. Right. All those are like streamlined silver, you know, looking gleaming stores. I was like, okay, that's fine for Chipotle. That's fine for whoever else. But this was something that had been preserved, right? And you know, rubbed away so somebody could say they did a big redesign. So, you know, now they need to do something about the food because they are losing customers. So they need to figure out, you know, where you go.
Right. I mean, and this is a very common thing for restaurants. I mean, they want to do some rebranding and some things when sales start to kind of flatline, and you're a publicly held company. You know, you're going to pay the price, you know, in the markets if you don't you know, increase sales and do something to show the market you're growing. So, you know, and executives who make a lot of money will lose their jobs. All kinds of things happen. So, you know, from that standpoint, I understand where their need was, but they totally misread the market. They're going to need to go back and figure this out. And, you know, how do you improve your food, you know, and without
get booze off the menu. You don't need to be selling booze. No one goes to Cracker Barrel to drink.
Right.
Give me a break, you know?
Yeah. And as we close, I just want to make it clear that McDonald's, you know, sold their shares in Chipotle long ago.
Yeah.
So they have no interest in Chipotle whatsoever, but they probably wish they had kept that because after they sold it off, the stock skyrocketed.
Yeah, did pretty good. Yeah.
Though right now Chipotle's kind of like, they're struggling.
Yeah. I mean, chain restaurants are all in trouble. They're all over.
Yeah, it's getting hard. All right, everyone. All right. So once again, my attempt to keep it under an hour has failed. I am miserably failing on this, but I think we're having a good show nevertheless. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again next week. Same time, same back channel.